I will pass things over to Luke. Luke, if you want to cue us up.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you all. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are today. I'm calling in from Colombia today, from Cali, Colombia, where I teach impact and sustainable finance, and also work on the some of the topics that we will be talking about today. And my focus will be today, or my intervention will focus on government relations. And just to give you some a little bit of background, I go back to a long time ago, back to 1997. It's a little bit of a deja vu, thinking about what's happening now, going back to the banking reform, where 6 of our bank wanted to merge, and finally ending up with 3 banks. And we, from that proposal from the bank, we built a national coalition in Canada, looking at all of the organizations that would be affected by such a fusion of all the bank, or this merging of all the banks. And the opportunity is not to wage a battle against the bank, but more about the regulation that needs to take place. And it's a little bit, I think, where we are in many of the discussion. And I like all the presentation today, because I think we've touched on many of the points that needs to be brought forward, that maybe we need a little bit of a coordination. And I'll explain a little bit more what I mean by coordination. But again, I think, building on the previous presentation, I think it's looking at some of the activities that the government is doing, the national government, and I think we need to look as well at the provincial government and local government when it comes to advocating our government relations, and it's happening right now at different level, right? I mean, there's just so many organizations, and I think those that we're speaking on behalf of are definitely not at the table and rarely engaged in the discussion that we're having, and it's a very small communities, right, of organizations that are working on this. And I'll put my focus on 2 bills that are currently in the process right now. Bill S-243, which is a bill that's being moved by an independent senator, Rosa Galvez, on climate change. It's mostly focused on climate change. And you also have the Bill S-211, which again, for some of you would say, why should we be worrying about this bill? This bill is moving forward at good speed, and it's all around modern slavery, or the disclosure of data in value chain. And none of these bills actually see the link that both have with each other when it comes to disclosure. And it's a little bit where we are when it comes to regulation, or the outcome of these bills eventually is to come to regulation. And if we're going to ask for disclosures, what do we want from these disclosure? And, do we have a common voice? Do we agree on some of the things that we need to lobby for? Because we know that the banks are lobbying, and the financial institution are lobbying the federal government, and so our corporation. When it comes to disclosure, we as organization, we have our framework, but our frameworks are tools that companies or financial institutions will be able to use whenever there is a regulation. But we're not quite sure on the end outcome of these bills and what they're all about. Over the past couple of months, there's been some consultation from MP Ryan Turnbull from the Liberal government. And he's actually hosting today and tomorrow, or was it yesterday and today, a small conference or forum with senators and MPs on Parliament Hill on sustainable finance, right? And what do we mean by sustainable finance? And I think this is where we are. We've had many discussions with different organizations, and I'm not taking a position from the capitals of Canada, but basically talking in general terms as to the opportunity that this brings for us to actually maybe come up with some kind of a coalition on some of these issues that we need to have clear, or at least be informing the government when it comes to disclosure and the use of these disclosures, and who will be disclosing, because I don't think it's coming out quite clear. We know it's upstream when it comes to financial institution, but we know the information at the end of the day is in scope 3 with SMEs, and they'll be the one that will have to bear the burden on these disclosures, and what needs to be disclosed, and what's the use of this data at the end of the day, right? Is it to penalize? Is it to help improve? I think none of this is clear. I think many of the organizations haven't looked at the recent data. But when it comes to the budget consultation that the federal government did, I think it ended a couple of days ago. Again, I don't think there has been that many participation from NGOs, from civil societies, from organizations about the impact that the budget will have, or the impact that the budget could have when it comes to disclosure and when it comes to non-financial capitals, right? These intangibles that we're talking about, nature, social, biodiversity, in anticipation of what's happening right now, COP27 and COP15, right? So I think the proposal, or what I'm looking at is, when you start looking at legislation or regulation, I think one of the proposals I've been putting forward with the Canadian Labour Congress, with different organizations as well, is how do we start looking at creating maybe a national coalition, and we start talking about the impact of these disclosure and what do we want to do with this data. And it was great to hear from Caroline about the impact in First Nation communities. And I think they were the first one coming out and saying, where's the I in ESG, right? Where's the Indigenous? Because this is, they're basically the proposal was they know what's happening in their communities, and they can be better informed, and they should not be told by the national government on what to do and how to interact with companies that will be in their communities or extracting materials from their communities, for example, right? There's also the international impact that this regulation will have, because Canadian companies mining, I think it was mentioned by Mark, right? Canadian companies are here in Colombia, and right now, I mean, there's no discussion about the disclosure. There's many other companies, so the Canadian Colombian Chamber of Commerce and others are not discussing right now, right? What will be the impact of some of the disclosure. So I think when it comes to government relation, I think that this brings a great opportunities right now for the Capitals Hub Canada and maybe the Capitals Coalition to come together and maybe put a little bit of a framework, right, for the work ahead that needs to be taking place. The opportunities to have lobby days on Parliament Hill, right, to inform MPs. I think nobody's quite clear on the impact that this will have on our communities, and I think MPs are looking for that kind of feedback. I don't think it's coordinated right now, and there's anything that's being done anyway from this side. The financial institutions are doing very well when it comes to lobbying, but I think this is something that we need to do. That we need to unite, have some kind of a united voice, on with Parliament to actually present memoirs or position papers on many of the part or the components that are taking place as part of Bill 211. Or Bill S243. So I think there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to disclosure. Will this have a gender focus? Will it have a community focus or social focus? I think this is where I think some of the discussion that we're having today in the launch of the Capitals Coalition, or the Canadian capture of the Capitals Coalition, I think brings in opportunities to have this discussion internally in Canada, but also looking at all of these impact that these various legislation will come. And again, at the end of the day, we always hope that the government will do the right thing. And again, they'll make that information based on the information that they receive from the public. And right now, as I said, there's little being done when it comes to government relations. I think the appeal that we're making today, or that I'm making, and I hope our partners, members, and the audience and the different organizations, be it national, local, at different level, that will come together and start thinking about, how do we coordinate the next few months, right, of these bills that are going through the Senate or the House committees. We're not sure if these bills are going to make it all the way through, but I think we have a great opportunities to strengthen government relations, to actually use a lot of the international discussions that are taking place, right, in different communities. We know that our Canadian banks or financial institutions have a good presence in the US, and they'll be complying with the Security Exchange Commission, the regulation that will take place in the US, and it might be right now looking much more stronger than what's happening in Canada. So I think, again, I think this is a great opportunity for the discussion that we're having today, for the discussion that will come up after COP27 and COP15, on how do we start looking forward on key messages, key presentation at the various committees on Parliament Hill, be it the Senate or the House committees. And in some of the things that we want, some of the discussion that we're having right now around disclosure and finding that information. I think we just had that on the previous panel, looking at GRI as one source of information. And again, when it comes to reporting as well, what kind of reporting are we asking? We will be asking more PDF, or should we move to the 21st or 22nd century and looking at XBRL, right? Some of these reports where we can get the information, because it's hard for us to go through a 10,000 pages of paper PDF document to find that golden nugget from these corporations, of financial institutions. So we have a great opportunities right now, I think, to come together, and it's the proposal that as a director and a founder of the Capitals Hub Canada, that we can come together, put key messages together, have a plan, for the next year, for at least a year ahead on some of the activities that we could engage our partners and other organizations that are also looking at some of these bills. So again, thank you for giving me this space to speak a little bit about government relations. I think there's so much more that could be done, and I'm looking forward, hopefully, that the Capitals Coalition or the Canadian Capitals Hub will take some lead with our members to actually start lobbying, not only at the federal level, because the implication of these regulations sometimes do not apply to provincial authorities, such as the Toronto Stock Exchange, for example. But anyway, thank you again. Great opportunities, great discussion, and looking forward to hear from the next panelists. Thank you again.